Hello again everybody, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be talking to you about mental illness and sleep. My name is Tracy Maxfield. I'm a retired nurse, author, peer specialist, and very staunch stop bullying and mental health advocate. So before we begin our discussion on sleep, first I would like to encourage you to consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. Just press the button below. In 2020, I am going to be covering a lot of very interesting topics related to various mental disorders in children and teenagers. So sleep. Can't live with it, can't live without it. Is that what they say? We spend 1/3 of our lives doing it. And sleep is as essential to our survival as food and water, believe it or not. Now, we all know how we feel if we've been sleep deprived for a couple of days. We get forgetful, our brains get foggy, even our appetites are affected. We start eating, fatty, sugary foods. And so, in a nutshell, sleep is essential to our general health and well-being, especially our cognitive and mental health. So, first of all, let's define what is sleep. Well, according to the textbooks, it is a naturally recurring state of mind and body characterized by altered consciousness, relatively inhibited sensory activity, reduced muscle activity, and inhibition of nearly all voluntary muscles during REM, rapid eye movement sleep, and reduced interaction with surroundings. So there are two types of sleep. There's non-REM sleep and then there's REM sleep. And REM sleep is the dreaming stage. There are also 4 stages of sleep. And so during sleep, we actually cycle through all 4 stages, and we cycle through non-REM sleep and REM sleep. So the first stage is stage 1 non-REM sleep, and that's actually the period where we go from wakefulness to that drowsiness and light sleep. Stage 2 is then a period of light sleep before we descend into deeper sleep. And actually most of our sleep throughout the night is actually stage 2. Stage 3 is also non-REM sleep, but that is actually the period of deep sleep. And this is the sleep that is needed to feel refreshed in the mornings. And then finally stage 4 is the REM sleep. Now REM sleep is that deep sleep, that deep dreaming stage. Interestingly, it occurs probably about 90 minutes to 2 hours after falling asleep. And REM sleep is vitally important because it provides us with the emotional and cognitive benefits of sleep. Now, also involved in sleep is the circadian rhythm that regulates our sleep, hunger, and energy levels. And it's known as the body clock and is about 24 hours long each day. And this cycle influences brain wave activity patterns, cell repair, and hormone levels in our body. So we also know that changes in temperature and changes in light can also affect the circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm also secretes several hormones that are involved in sleep. The 2 most important ones being melatonin and cortisol. So melatonin usually happens when it gets dark outside and there's reduced light, and it triggers the body into getting prepared for that period of sleep. So you get relaxed and you get more tired and you start yawning. Cortisol is our wake up hormone. So cortisol actually dips at bedtime, and then throughout the night as we sleep it gradually increases, peaking just before we awaken. And cortisol is what gives us our energy, believe it or not, to get out of bed, although a few of us would disagree with that. And it also stimulates our appetite, so we're famished when we wake up. Now, our circadian rhythm, as you know, can get disrupted if we travel. Think if you travel like to the United Kingdom with the hour change, that will disrupt our sleep pattern and our circadian rhythm. Another factor that can disrupt circadian rhythm is blue light. That is light that's emitted from computers and phones and tablets, our social media devices, because what it does is it tricks the body into thinking there's more light, so the melatonin doesn't actually trigger. And so you keep on going into this period of alertness and wakefulness, and then when you finally turn off the devices and try to go to sleep, what happens is many kids and teenagers especially turn off their devices so late that they never go into that period of REM sleep, and even in the period of deep sleep, so their body doesn't have time to recharge and their cells do not regenerate. Now remember, everything is affected by sleep, so it helps cell regeneration and growth and development. It also creates healthy brains, restful sleep, so relaxes our muscles. And also what it does is it helps our immune system. So people that are traditionally sleep deprived tend to get sick and catch colds more often than people who are not sleep deprived. Now, the big question is, how much sleep do children and teenagers need? And whilst there's actually no magic number, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine has provided some helpful guidelines suggesting that children ages 3 to 5 need on average 10 to 13 hours of sleep. Children ages 6 to 12 usually about 9 to 12 hours sleep, and then teenagers usually need about 8 to 10 hours sleep. Now, I'm sure there's lots of parents that say, my kids sleep and they sleep in late and they're late for school. I think what's important to remember is it does not necessarily mean that they are sleeping too much. It could be that they're on their devices so late into the night, in fact until the early morning hours, that they're actually existing on maybe 4 to 5 hours of sleep, and their brains and body need much more. Now, what we know is that children and teenagers who do not achieve REM sleep easily become tired, fatigued, moody, irritable. They can actually have some cognitive decline in that they're not sharp with their brains, so their grades start to fail. They may actually fail assignments, but they also may skip school, think truancy. They also start turning to high sugary, fatty foods, and also sodas and caffeine, and that may be to give them energy and to help them keep awake when they have assignments to do. Now, I think the challenge with society right now is that all of us are experiencing some form of sleep problems because of work commitments and everything else that's going on in our life. The same is true for our children and teenagers. They're playing video games, they're interacting with others on their devices, they're checking out social media sites, after school activities, homework assignments. Think of the expectations, also dietary changes. All of these will play an important role in the quality and length of sleep that they're actually going to have. And what we do know is that if a child or teenager does not get good quality sleep, so think deep sleep and REM sleep, they are highly predisposed to the development of a mental disorder such as depression or anxiety. Similarly, if a child or teenager already has a pre-existing mental disorder, it will exacerbate the symptoms, and especially those who are living with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. It has a very negative effect. So studies show that sleep quality can be a barometer of mental health, and what we find is that the five most common mental disorders associated with poor sleep, changes in sleep, sleep deprivation are anxiety disorders, panic disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So now I'm going to very briefly discuss why these particular groups have more sleep problems than maybe other mental disorders, and then what can parents do, what can you do to help your child. So we know that anxiety is a reaction to stress. Think of the fight, flight, fight response, anxiety and panic disorder, where the brain does not reset to normal and is on complete high alert. So what happens is this high alert triggers the hormone cortisol, that's the body's stress hormone, and then it operates against the melatonin, the hormone ready for inducing sleep. And so the more stressed a child or teenager is, the less melatonin is produced and the more cortisol is produced, which puts them into wakefulness. So they experience insomnia, nightmares, they may have nocturnal panic attacks. And interestingly, approximately 44 to 71% of children, teenagers and adults who have a panic disorder experience nocturnal panic attacks. So if you have a child or a teenager who is living with an anxiety or panic disorder and has the subsequent sleep problems, treatments include therapy. Obviously, talk therapy is extremely important, relaxation techniques, but I think one of the most important therapies that has been introduced to help them is called CBT-I. Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for Insomnia. Now, schizophrenia and sleep, very well known to go hand in hand, sleep problems. So it's estimated approximately 30 to 80% of children, teenagers, adults who live with schizophrenia experience disturbed sleep. The sleep problems in schizophrenia are inconsistent sleep volume, abnormal sleep patterns due to the delayed melatonin release and shifted circadian system. And what that does, it just exacerbates their symptoms and their mood. And as I said, it can be very troubling for the child or teenager who's actually dealing with this, because it will actually potentiate the effects of their hallucinations or their delusions. Now, the treatment options include therapy again, and usually at this stage, if it's severe, the psychiatrist will introduce an antipsychotic medication such as clozapine. Bipolar disorder and sleep will vary depending on whether or not the child is in the manic stage or in the depressed stage. The problem is, of course, when they're in the depressed stage, they will sleep longer because of that sense of hopelessness and worthlessness and the absolute excruciating fatigue and pain. The most common problems are sleeplessness, insomnia, hypersomnia, irregular sleep pattern, sleep apnea, and interestingly, DSP, delayed sleep phase syndrome. And this is where the circadian rhythm is delayed, and it leaves the child or teenager feeling like they're in a perpetual state of jet lag. Now, treatment for bipolar and sleep. Obviously, you continue with the treatments that are already being ordered for the bipolar, but you add in an additional one, and that includes CBT-I, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, and also another one that could be considered and needs to be discussed with the psychiatrist, obviously, is called sleep restriction stimulus control techniques. And then finally, ADHD in sleep. Now, research has shown that children and teenagers with ADHD experience higher levels of daytime sleepiness and are more than twice as likely to suffer from sleep disordered breathing. Also, kids with ADHD have periodic limb movement disorder called PLMD and restless leg syndrome, RLS, which also leads to less restful sleep, so more frequent waking up and then difficulty getting back to sleep. And then obviously, because the sleep stages are interrupted, they don't go into the deep sleep and the REM sleep. Now, the challenge is that many of the medications used to treat ADHD can contribute to the sleep problem. So they will either worsen existing sleep problems or they will create a sleep problem such as the insomnia and sleep disordered breathing. Treatment options include obviously monitoring the medications very closely, bedtime rituals, avoiding caffeine and stimulants, avoidance of blue light, and daily exercise. So I think what I'm trying to explain is that mental illness and sleep are so closely intertwined that we cannot ignore the importance of good sleep for our children and teenagers. And what studies have found is that there is a high correlation not only between mental illness and sleep or insomnia, but also suicide. So what happens is the mental illness or the disorder and the insomnia exacerbate the effects of each other, creating the classic negative feedback loop, right? And so once this loop gets started, it pushes people more and more into a downward spiral. And we know if we are not sleeping properly, we're not thinking properly, then we do silly things and we do reactionary things because we are just so exhausted. Remember, the key word is you just can't think properly. So imagine if you already have an existing mental disorder, the impact that's going to have. So what can parents do? So these tips are useful if you just have a child or teenager who is experiencing some sleep problems. But it's especially important if you have a child or a teenager with ADHD or with a mental disorder such as depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, panic disorder, bipolar. So the first thing you can do, obviously, you've got to make sure that the bedroom is safe and comfortable, and that the bed and the bedding is comfortable, and that the room temperature is set not too hot and not too cold. Think of the porridge in Goldilocks. You want to remove distractions. So you want to ensure that the radio and the television is turned off and all social media devices are removed. Ideally, they should be turned off at least 1 to 2 hours before bedtime. And I think as a family, if you all work together and actually have everyone turn off their social media devices at the same time each night, and then put them in a central location where they can charge overnight, that may be helpful. You use the bed for sleep only. Keep to a regular bedtime schedule. Same time you go to bed, same time you get up in the morning, even on weekends. What studies have found is that sleeping in really doesn't help. Promote a healthy winding down period. So maybe a game, a bedtime story, a chat, a warm drink, a bath, dim the lights. Promote restfulness. You don't want to have bright lights and triggers, and certainly no stimulants or caffeine. Maybe practice relaxation exercises and mindfulness. Other things that you want to do, obviously if your child is being treated for a mental disorder, you must continue with that treatment, medications, therapy, etc. You're going to encourage the child to follow a daily schedule, and in that you're going to include a healthy diet, fluids, daily exercise. We know that daily exercise, not only is it good for the mood, but it will promote restful sleep. Other things is you want to follow up with school if they're having problems at school, such as falling asleep in class or failing grades. Also be aware of the child or teenager's sleep habits. Are they snoring an awful lot? Do they appear to have sleep apnea? These are all important factors that could indicate an additional health problem, and you need to follow up with the doctor. Other things you can do, as I said, you must always be there for your child. So talk with them, listen to them, support them, offer guidance, show love. That's the most important thing. Again, be there, listen, show love. Other things you can do is maybe to ensure that they get up at the same time each morning is to have an alarm clock, or even an alarm clock with a built-in light. I reviewed that in my YouTube video on seasonal affective disorder, SAD, and so 10 minutes before the alarm goes off, the room is filled with light, starts promoting the cortisol to go into that wakeful period. But I think the most important thing is that it's to try and regulate a healthy sleep pattern for your child. And remember, when they go to bed, if they need a nightlight, if they need the door open, then you do that. I mean, if they need a favorite toy or something that gives them comfort, you want to promote a safe, comfortable environment. You follow through on that. But remember, once they're in bed, don't go downstairs and then start turning on the TV or music so it's really loud, or keep running up and down the stairs, because those kinds of noise disruptions will prevent them going in to that next stage of sleep. So I hope you found these tips helpful, and that you will start working with your children and teenagers, and even follow them yourself to try and get into the habit of promoting healthy nightly sleep.